District Board of Trustees. We would like to start our meeting with a flag salute. So everybody please rise and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our next item would be our agenda review. Do we have any items to add or pull this evening? We do not. Next up, special presentations, correspondence, and superintendent and staff comment. We will start with superintendent report.
Yeah, thank you so much, board, and thank you, parents, for being here. As I was telling them out in the lobby, we are so excited to have our CRAE students here today. This is the first student presentation that we've had in a long time, and we know you guys are going to do a great job. What's going to happen is I'm going to do a quick report first, and then you guys are going to be next right after that, okay? So thank you so much for being patient, and thank you, parents, for being here. I also want to say a special thank you to Mr. Jones and Mrs. Bell for being here. I know it's been a long day, and we appreciate you coming here. And how pleased I was to see Matt Bell, who was one of the best school resource officers that we ever had in the district. So it's really nice to see you, Matt. Yeah. Come back anytime. All right. So I'd like to show off some of the things that have happened in the school district since our last meeting. And so our food services department really put together a great Crunch It, Munch It event that took place in combination with Frog Hollow Farms. And there were lots of schools that celebrated and that did all kinds of things. And so if you didn't get a chance to get one of the pears, they were really good. And so it's a great way to connect. I also this is the time of the year that the Adams Creative Dramatic students create a haunted house. I was happy to see the preview and not go through. It's usually too scary for me, but they do a great job, and it's a great way for them to practice some of their theatrical skills and also raise money for their school as well. So congratulations to them. Lots of pumpkin activities, and so here's some Marsh Creek first grade teachers working in combination with GNS Farms, doing lots of pumpkin science and activities related to that to celebrate that. As you know, we have some fabulous classified employees who do a lot to support our school. Here's our Garen Yard Duty team who got a wardrobe update. So thanks to Miss Crystal who helped with that. Those look great. And then also a lot of the sites were celebrating, well, all of the sites were celebrating Red Ribbon Week in different ways. And so Contra Costa County Fire Department came out to Brentwood Elementary with a lunch recess fire truck exhibit. So that was fun for them. So thank you very much to them. One of my favorite things throughout the year is to be able to attend the Special Olympic events that take place. On the 28th at Heritage, they did a soccer event. We had multiple schools participating. You can see some here from Heritage and Adams and Pioneer that are out there that are participating, and then some more here, some Rondon students. It is just such a special thing. We do multiple things of these throughout the year, and it's a great partnership with neighboring schools and school districts. And so it's just fun to see students so exciting to participate. So congratulations and thanks to all who did so much hard work. Lots of great family events still going on. I shared some last time. Here's Trunk or Treat Night at Brentwood Elementary. There were some amazing decorations that were out there that students got to go through and experience. This was a fun experience that took place at CRAE and Mrs. Sweat's class. So they were studying how craters were formed and did an experiment out there where they were dropping items from a specific height to see what sort of impact it would have, what sort of impact crater it would have down below. So great to her for making science fun. This is a special partnership that's been built by our fantastic new Edna Hill Middle School principal, Lenore Medina, who connected with Edna Brewer Middle School. And they came together and brought kids together to do restorative justice circles to learn about that. And so I want to thank Mr. Gibson from Edna Brewer Middle School for connecting with Miss Medina. I know the staff's going to continue to work on those and develop them throughout the school. So I thought that was a really neat thing, and I hope the partnership continues. Edna Brewer is from Oakland. Yeah. So, and then we had a fantastic Halloween event all throughout. I just took some of the costumes up here and put, the claw one was my favorite, that young girl at Edna Hill that made that. I asked her if I could take a picture of it, but it is so much fun to see Halloween parades back and the kind of energy that comes from that. So here's some of the parades that took place, some of the staff costumes that took place out there to celebrate, a lot of coordinating going on at different schools and celebrating that. So just thanks to everybody for putting so much energy into it and making it so fun for everybody to participate in that. See some more there. I even saw Pam, who used to be the librarian, that went out and participated. She retired a few years ago, but came out and participated at Bristow. She's the one in the wheelchair there that's the victim. So good for her. Mr. Fallon, our wonderful band teacher out at Adams Middle School, they were playing Thriller for students at lunch on Halloween, so a great fun way to celebrate out there. I want to say a special thanks to our school resource officers. They've been coming out. This was the second time in 2 weeks where they came out and played basketball with some students out at Edna Hill to give them something positive and fun to do during lunchtime. I told Sergeant Parrott that I would put this picture in because there's actually air under his feet when he's jumping up there and taking that shot. And so I told him I'd do him a solid. Yeah. So, but really thank you to them they work so hard to build relationships with our students. And then following Halloween, November 1st, we had a staff development day. This day is one where we have some outside presenters, and we also have some of our own experts inside, teachers in classrooms, staff developers from the district office that put on classes and courses that are offered. And I just appreciate everybody who shared their expertise and made it a wonderful day of learning for our teachers. I want to continue to recognize the Brentwood Rotary Club for bringing dictionaries to all of our third graders. So this is at Loma Vista. That's a tradition that's carried on for a long time, and it's been a great partnership. Cray also has this tradition of having Mount Diablo Astronomical Society come out and do a star watch at night. So they called it a star party, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity and usually well attended. So thank you to them, and thank you for Mr. Jones for helping put that on. Our TLC interns, which is our Teaching and Learning Center interns out from Liberty that they spend a lot of time working at Guerin in classrooms. So coming out and making a partnership with Miss Montez's first grade class at Guerin, they were doing buddy reading out there, part of their development, learning to be future teachers, and a great thing for our students as well. So thank you for that. I was able out at Bristow to watch Mr. Gomez's class in science. He was teaching his students about tectonic plates using graham crackers and frosting and water. It was a really good lesson as they were shoving them together and watching what happens during an earthquake. So the kids were super engaged with that. We had a group of students from Adams go to UC Berkeley and take a trip out there, and hopefully we'll get some future students out there joining. Walk through California taking place at Marsh Creek with our fourth graders, getting an opportunity to live and go in depth with some of California histories going forward. So great opportunity for them. This is Miss Ranger, who runs our GATE program. And so they took a field trip to the Brentwood Press, and they're now writing their own newspaper as a result. So that's a great project. It's that time of the year where sports are kicking into high gear. So here's the Bristow and Edna Hill teams playing each other. So just thank you to everybody who's involved in that. It's great to watch our students back playing sports and doing that. I also was able to go out at Adams and watch Mrs. Penner's class do some experiments around land formations and water. And so they're blowing some wind and seeing what happens in there. There was great energy in there when kids really get their hands on things. One of the things that's just so exciting in being back in person is watching the opportunities that teachers have to engage kids in real activities and see what really happens, which is harder to do online. So it's just a really fun thing. As I was walking around Adams, everybody told me how wonderful the Day of Understanding was for so many of the students. So Adams has been doing a project throughout the year in trying to build the community that exists out in Adams. And so Keith Hawkins, who's a motivational speaker, came out and did a program for them. And then about 250 students were selected for an additional day where they got some in-depth training from him. So really well received by them. Lots of our schools usually do a great job of honoring Veterans Day. So on November 10th, because we were out on the 11th, this is Brentwood Elementary that also always does a wonderful program in their third grade rooms that were out there. It's always well attended. And then Ron Nunn School celebrating the veterans that were there. So thank you to all the schools that put that together. And just another reminder, the last reminder is Turkey Trot is coming up. It's next Thursday, if you believe it or not. And so they're expecting a record turnout. So if you haven't signed up, there's still time to sign up. And I urge you to come out and join us. And that is my report for this evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eaton. All right, next up, we have a student presentation from Cray Elementary.
Yeah, and I'd like to introduce Cray's longtime principal, Mr. Brian Jones. Okay, thank you. Just like morning announcements, okay? All right. What's that? No, I think so. I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you, School Board, Dr. Eaton, Cabinet, for allowing us to be here this evening. We appreciate that. I'm Brian Jones, principal at Cray. Very fortunate to bring with me tonight Mrs. Bell, who's one of our truly amazing first grade teachers. And I'm going to go down the line here and I'm going to have these Cray Coyotes introduce themselves to you, just like morning announcements. Say your name.
Linnea, Evan,
Good job.
Haley, Germany, Chase.
All right, so here we go. So we're going to present on secret stories, which won't be much of a secret once we're done tonight. So we're focusing on LCAP goal number 1, standards, benchmarks, and the framework. And this is going to be about hacking the brain's back door. And so secret stories are a learning tool that we're using in first grade. They're the reasons why letters make the sounds that they make and why they go together. And so it's all about uncovering the secret behind it. There are logical explanations for why sounds behave the way that they do. It's also rooted in the science of reading. So it's systematic, it's multisensory and explicit, and it works really well in conjunction with our language arts program, Reading Wonders, Haggerty. And again, it's just about looking at the code behind the sounds.
So we want to think of the secret stories as eating off a buffet.
Oops, there we go. We want to think of the secret stories as eating off of a buffet. So you don't have to go in order of the buffet. You don't have to take everything off of it. It's just there for you, and you take what you need when you need it. It is a fabulous learning tool that learners need to crack the entire reading and writing code. And it's a brain-based approach that brings the study of words to life in such an engaging and fun way, and it really, they remember it. It's just magical. Okay, so before we go through that, we're going to show you how we go through our secret stories. Pass that off. Come over here towards you guys. Linnea, if you want us to sneak around just a little bit so you can see how we go through these. Okay, just some of them. Here we go. Ready? It and I and back nice and loud. Us. Ah and O and You. Ow and E or I or E. And E and S-I-O and shun. S-I-O and shun. You do it. T-I-O and shun. T-I-O and shun. A shun. A shun. A-T-I-O and A-T-I-O and A shun. A shun. A and E. R. Aww. Ing, ang, ong, ink, ank, onk, unk. You say your name. A-E-I-O-U. And oi. C-E-C-I-C-Y, 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 G-E-G-I-G-Y, 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 G-E-G-I-G-Y. Yawn. And A and and U. Okay, so now we're going to look at this word up here. Germany, do you see a secret up there? What do you see?
I see oi.
Oi. Yes, I see oi. Chase, do you see another one?
I see us.
Okay, let's see, Mr. Jones. If you go to the next one. There we have oi and us. Let's see if we can read this word. Ready?
Joyous.
Oi, us. What's the word? Joyous. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's see. Haley, what secret do you see?
I see TH making a sound.
And is it voiced or unvoiced?
Unvoiced.
Okay, let's see. Evan, what do you see?
I see A.
Hey! Linnea, what do you see?
Oh.
Okay, let's see if we can read this word. Ready?
Thursday.
Thursday. Nice job. One more. Oh, back to Chase. Chase, do you see secret?
I see or.
Or. Germany, do you see one? Okay, let's see. Haley, do you see another one?
I see CE.
CE. So if we go to the next one, let's see if we can read the word. Ready? Or.
Forest.
You're close.
Force.
Or. There you go. What's the word?
Force.
Okay. Okay. Evan's going to share his secret, his favorite secret.
My favorite secret story is short E because it's in my name.
Okay, Chase, you want to tell us about the secrets in your name?
C
What do you have?
and A and
Who's at the end?
Mommy.
And what's Mommy say?
You say your name. My favorite secret is ink, ink, unk, unk because I like saying it.
Germany, will you share the secrets in your name? What else do you have?
A, E, I, E, I, E.
And in your name, what's Y saying?
E, I, E,
And
I,
which one is it saying? Is it
E.
saying E? There you go.
My favorite secret story is the babysitter Valve because Y gets to be in charge sometimes.
So we just have a few quotes here. The first one is from Mrs. Bowyer, who is a first grade teacher at Cray Elementary, and she said, "Secret Stories has been a language arts game changer. The students are excited to learn a new secret every day and remember it. Even the most struggling students can find and say a phonics pattern, all because of the secrets they have learned." And then I said, "Secret Stories has significantly improved my instruction. My students beg to go through them every day, and they're finding them in print all over the classroom and school. Secret hunting is one of our favorite activities. I can't imagine teaching first grade without access to secret stories." And then from Mrs. Sweat, a second grade teacher at Cray, she said, "Secret Stories engages students to make learning phonics patterns and rules fun. This school year, as a second grade teacher, there have been many times I heard an enthusiastic, 'That's a secret,' when I introduced a new syllable type or phonics pattern to my students. My son became a strong reader and speller through the use of secret stories in his classroom with Mrs. Bell. He came home excited to teach me what he was learning and felt confident and excited to use his decoding and encoding skills to read and write stories. Rooted in the science of reading research, Secret Stories gives the tools they need to become proficient readers in a fun, developmentally appropriate way."
And we have a quote here. This is from Chase's mom. From the first day that Chase started learning about secret stories, he was eager to share with all of us at home. Within a week, he began pointing out secrets every time he found one. He also loves to remind us that he has 2 secrets in his name. Chase truly loves learning about the secret stories, which we have noticed has made a significant impact on his reading ability overall. We have 2 children enrolled at Cray, and our youngest is at the SLP program at Loma. We admire that what the school district has done for our children over the years, and the Secret Stories program and the opportunity to share our thoughts about it further that even more. And then we have a quote from Evan's mom, and Evan says he really likes to say all the sounds for the secret stories when he's reading or sees a word that that has one of them. He always says, "Mom, it's a secret story." Is that what you really say? Do you say that all the time? Yeah. Okay. He's all day long. He's been able to pronounce and recognize the blended letters together in a fun and really effective method. I absolutely love the secret stories. With it being the first year presented and taught here at Cray, I fully believe it will be a very successful learning tool in all the schools.
And then here's just a few pictures. So there's a picture of the secret stories just up in my classroom. We start the year like that, and they are up there. So they just take whatever they need when they're reading or writing. I have some students who are doing some writing. Through Donors Choose, I received some of those secret story little trifolds that they're able to use. And then down at the bottom, you can see a secret hunting. It's one of our favorite things to do. So once we read our anthology and our reading writing workshop book, we go back and hunt for all of the secrets we can find, and there's a lot of them. And then there's a picture of us. It's hard to see, but it says we love secret stories, and then a picture of my students with some of our favorite secrets.
And thank you for welcoming us tonight. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So I would like to thank you guys all for being here. I know I speak for the whole board and all of us here when I say we're super excited to have you come and present to us tonight. And to thank you, we have a certificate for each one of you that we would like to present. And the first one is for Germany. Thank you so much. Haley. Thank you so much. And Evan. And next up, we have Linnea. And this one is for Chase. You all are welcome to stick around and hear about boundaries and budgets and all kinds of fun stuff, or you're welcome to leave for the night.
Thank you so much, everybody. Great job. Thank you, Mrs. Bell. Fantastic job. Thank you, students. Thank you, parents, for bringing them out.
Yeah, so nice to have student presentations again. It's all downhill from here, folks. All right. Next up, does any board member have any comment or any committee reports to report on?
I went to Bristow yesterday, watched the basketball games and girls basketball game. I was impressed. Good job by the coaches out there. They did a nice job. And that's all I wanted to say.
All right, great. Anybody else? Okay, moving on to our next item, which would be public comment. Do we have any speaker cards this evening?
No, we do not. We just need a motion to open and then close.
I'll make a motion that we open public comment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we open public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion that we close public comment.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we close public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to our next item.
Before we move on, I meant to say this earlier. I'm sorry. I'd like to welcome Sammy back to the circle, the circle of the love. So, welcome back, and thanks for filling in, and we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Next up would be our consent items and our consent calendar. Are there any items that need to be pulled or discussed?
I don't need to pull one, but if it'd be okay, I just wanted to mention out loud the generosity from John and Julie Elam. They donated $1,000 to our special education programs for students. This is the second time that they've done that. We just really appreciate their generosity. There's a letter that'll go out to them, but I wanted to acknowledge them at a board level as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Without further ado, I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent items 8.0 through 8.6.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve items 8.0 through 8.6. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next up, item 9, hearings and appeals. We have none. And item 10, report out of closed session. Nothing to report.
Thank you, Brian. That was great.
And moving on to item 10.1, expulsion of student number 10-2022-04.
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation to expel student 10-2022-04.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we agree to the stipulated expulsion of student number 10-2022-04. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Next up, item 10.2. This is an information item on enrollment and boundaries update.
Good evening, board. And I know that you've had the chance to enjoy all the information I provided in your packet. I'm going to try to summarize that quickly tonight. And tonight's really about giving you an update of the process. Remember, the process is we're working through some options, bringing you back some feedback, or bringing you back those options relative to where we are, getting feedback. We'll go back and sort of fine tune those, get those, probably bring you back an update at the next board meeting, with the idea of probably going out and having public meetings at the school sites in January and coming back for a final in February. So that's sort of where we are in the process. So tonight's sort of an update of where we are, sort of what we learned, some feedback, and some of the variables we're tracking, as well as an opportunity to get some feedback from the board here tonight. So just a couple of summary reminder pages is we generate about 0.39 kids in a single family home and about 0.18 out of a multifamily home. So about 39 for every 100 kid or every 100 units for homes, and about 18.9 kids for every multis or apartments or duplexes type options. Secondly, is relative to the out-year projections based on what's on the books with the city. These are housing units on the books in the city. That means they've been approved or the application's in place. So PA1 is still not included for the most part, although Amber Lane Apartments, and there's another project that's been on the book. So these are just the number of units that are projected over the next 8 to 10 years as an idea of where we are. And you can see in the out years, we have no new development because those applications aren't in place yet. Lastly, just to back on, remember TK enrollment, they're expanding the date ranges. So in 22-23, they added December and January, and 23-24, February and March, and so on. So you can see the months they'll be adding in the out years. By the time in 25-26, we'll be adding TK kids all the way through birthdays of August. This is really where we are right now. And so the first column is the projections based on what our demographer had, really with projections looking at snapshots. So this is really based on sort of the first Wednesday of October, and this is based on everything they had at the time they did the projections. The second column is just a reminder for the board, just a reminder. And again, it's still an estimate. I believe we have a couple of more residents. I don't think we're off by 600 kids, but we don't have 600 intras, I know. So we're working through that process now, but it's a reference point of where we are. And so those are just the residents. The projections and the current are actually the kids in attendance at school. So basically the school of attendance, so to speak. And right now, as 11-9, when we ran this data, we were 9,512 kids, about 52 kids over where we were at CBEDS, or where our projections were at CBEDS. Looking at that sort of in a different way and actually looking at enrollment projections over time, again, there's the CBEDS numbers. Again, there's where we were at 11-9. And really a year from now, we're looking about the projections are about 9,700 kids. and you can see that we're growing about 191 kids and 166, 186, 132 over time. And just if you look down at the bottom, there's a grades TK3, grades 4, 6, and grades 7, 8. So that's looking at grade level spans. And you can see that most of the growth is actually cumulative now. That's cumulative at the bottom. Most of the growth is actually happening in grades TK through 3, with some growth in 4 through 6 and very little growth down at the bottom in 7 through 8. And that's just the starting point. Another way to look at that is looking at it by grade. So the top of the chart is really looking at year-to-year growth. So in 23-24, we're projecting, about 104 transitional kindergartners. And 24-25, it's 116 new students. And the reason I've highlighted that, you can see where most of the growth is occurring over the next 3 years. Most that's occurring, almost 350 kids, 360 kids there. It's just happening in the TK area. If you look at the bottom, this is cumulative now. You can see that cumulatively over the next 4 years, we're going to grow almost 400 kids in transitional kindergarten, about 67 in kindergarten, and you can see the rest of the grade levels are much further behind that, with variation and growth over time as we move forward. And it's just something to watch because it also shows where the impact will be relative to where the new kids are going to be, and some of the decisions we have to make relative to grade spans and room assignment, so to speak. Again, looking at, we have a board policy in place relative to boundary criteria. We've talked about that. Again, that's governed most of the work we've done to date. Really looking at disruptions to existing boundaries, looking at community schools to the best of our ability. Safe walking routes is sometimes the most hardest one to look at. It's the ones that gets affected the most. Capacity for growth, and then just balance of enrollment between existing schools, et cetera. And we'll look at some of those things as we look at the two options we're looking at tonight. This is the current elementary boundaries. And what I want you to look at, because I'm not going to bore you with jumping back and forth, to look at those is if you notice the brown area, the Pioneer area, you can see it follows the railroad track that sort of runs diagonally and all the way down to Sand Creek. Lone Tree, or Marsh Creek, which is blue, Lone Tree doesn't have any boundaries on here, the Lone Tree site. Marsh Creek is sort of that other three-sided area that also runs along the railroad tracks, sort of down to, I think, I'm not sure what that crossroad is. It's just south of Sand Creek. And then you can see Loma Vista in yellow and Ron Nunn in pink, and sort of what those areas look like. And remember, I'll be talking about that and noticing how those change as we look at the two options tonight. So scenario 2, the scenario 1 we looked at was just, while it was an option, the numbers just didn't work out. It was another bad example, and I don't want to put another bad example in front of you tonight. So we'll start with scenario 2. So you can see in scenario 2, the Pioneer area has moved back to the Fairview Avenue at this time in this example. And you can see that the Lone Tree site now is a light blue or a light green, light blue on there. You can see that the area that's designated on there, and the red line that I added on there, that's the railroad track. So there's sort of a barrier. You have to get around that. There's no way to go across that except at Lone Tree and Sand Creek. And you can see Marsh Creek is also split sort of along, I think that's called Adams Way, that goes all the way up to Lone Tree. But you can see Loma Vista and Ron Nunn remain the same in this scenario. Now, looking at that, so that assumes Lone Tree opens in 24-25, and in this case, it's opening with 640 kids. But really, what we're looking at is how does it affect the other schools? So Brentwood L still up about 812 kids. Cray is up about 811 kids. But Pioneer, where we were well over almost 900, they're down to 738. And you'll also notice that Marsh Creek, because of how we changed the boundaries just in this scenario, is down to 619, and Ron Nunn is down to 605. And you can see that Loma Vista is pushing 783 because they're also gaining kids from the Cielo area. And so those new kids are projected to come into Loma Vista over time. And Loma Vista's numbers on these pages do not include the preschool kids that are already attending that school at this time. So while this is an option to look at, and looking at the distribution of kids and the enrollment and the size, two schools, down in the 600s, that means we didn't really balance really well looking at this example. And it also means that there's still some schools up around 800 that we need to look at and pay attention to sort of look at how we balance that. And looking at and you can see compared to the current, where Brentwood L is 824, Garen's 800, Cray's 803, and Pioneer's at 946. You can see how those numbers affected a year and a half, or really a year and a half from now. So scenario 3, so making some other tweaks. So on this one, you can see that we've expanded the Lone Tree area a little bit over to Empire Avenue. So we went, sort of across the railroad tracks, and it really only affects one little small development just up at there east or west of Winco. You can see that down just above Sand Creek, let me see if my mouse will work up here. You can see it on the screen, pretty small. Just above Sand Creek between Fairview and O'Hara Avenue, we split the area that was actually slated for another school back to Pioneer a little bit. But now Marsh Creek is getting some of those kids, and they're not going to Lone Tree. So very quickly, I'm going to jump up, to do this. So you can see all the light blue on here was slated for the Lone Tree site. And what Marsh Creek is. So if I come down and we get Carsick, sorry, Steve, that you can see that the blue area is now slated for Marsh Creek. So we made some adjustments to try to get some better balance in there. And we expanded Lone Tree over to there. And you can also see that the area for Marsh Creek is also expanded out a little bit into the Mary Casey Black area. So that little area above Grant Street, north of Grant Street, but east of Brentwood Boulevard, was slated for Mary Casey Black, would now be slated to Marsh Creek. The other piece is, notice that down here in the yellow and the pink, there's an area of pink now that used to be the extension of Loma Vista. We would say, hey, well, what if we move those kids to Pioneer, knowing that Loma Vista is starting to grow, trying to look at out-year growth and obligations for that in terms of what it does. So having said all that and making those tweaks, and I might add is actually a small committee of us, including Stephen Emil, went out and drove around, and we actually drove around the area between Fairview and looking at that area in terms of what the streets are. And the dividing line between the brown and the blue in that little area, right in this area, is actually that, there's that Greenbelt Park in there. And really there's only one street that goes through. And actually when we looked at it, the driving distance to Marsh Creek and to Pioneer, it's actually a little closer to drive to Marsh Creek and almost the same number of intersections that they have to cross. So that, I'm not going to say that's a best example, but it looks at trying to balance the driving, the safe walking distance or the safe walking paths. So looking at that, you can see that Lone Tree would open in 24-25 with about 496, about 200 below where they were before. That gives us some flexibility what we do with the Lone Tree site. But you can see now where Brentwood was 824, we didn't adjust Brentwood's boundaries at this time, but you can see Brentwood is still, they go up a little bit in the year one, and then they start to go down. We'll have to watch that one closely. Cray is still up in the 800s, but you can see that Loma Vista now jumps up into the 700s and then is in between 650 and 700 as you move out. Marsh Creek is now up in the 700 range. Pioneer is in the 800, 700 range, which is a little more reasonable. It's not a super small school, but it's much better than 950. And then Ron Nunn is also sort of levels out from 730 to 760 to 773. And we'll have to watch that. Again, this is a starting point. Remember, as we roll this out, there's a couple of things that we have to remember is as we look at the actual effects, and I think we'll look at a couple of small tweaks based on your feedback tonight. One of the things that will be coming back to you and that you'll consider as the board that we'll bring back to you that you've talked about is, we can go out and make these boundary changes, but then there's some grandfathering issues to think about is that, we may make the boundary changes, but there's some grandfathering issues, grandfathering options that we can provide to parents where they get to stay at the school through those kids' attendance at the school. The other thing is this is trying to do the best of looking at projections going out. Really more about residents than attendance is that, we have current fifth graders in the school now, and then the current fourth graders in the school now at the elementary sites. In 23-24, those kids will all be in middle school. So really it affects the TK through third grade students right now are the ones that are really truly affected when we actually look at the actually true implementation of boundaries. So, this is just some scenarios relative to just looking at schools of residence. Again, that's a draft. And, we'll come back with implementation policies relative to what we're looking at tonight. And we know we still have to look at some interim temporary assignments that we're doing right now. And we'll talk about that a little later tonight on another agenda item. We're watching Amber Lane PA1. And the timeline really quickly is looking at coming back to you in December with a quick update and then going out and having some public sessions in January. So I'll stop talking and let you ask questions, provide feedback. All of that information we'll take back and do what we need to do. But I'm not saying we're at the final point, but we're getting really close in terms of the communication that I had with the working group and going around and driving around and looking at these things. And we'll go and I'll leave it to you now.
Does anybody have any questions for Robin?
I know you all have followed exactly every change and the impact of each one and how it will change each school. And no, I've been working on this for months, and it's still, you realize what a difficult process it is. And it's this situation with the railroad track down the middle when there's only 3 crossings, Balfour, Sand Creek, and Lone Tree, and you can't really authorize any pedestrian traffic over a railroad. And Grant Street will probably not be put through for years, so you can't cross that group. And then you add the TK growth and how that's going to impact, and then the changing dynamics of enrollment and the growth out in the Lone Tree area. It becomes very complicated, and you're just going to piss off some people. And so, and they're going to be rightfully that way. But, I remind myself that in every city in the United States, twice a day, there's traffic around schools. It doesn't go away and boundaries don't change it. You're going to still have traffic around schools. You're still going to have many of those problems. You're going to have families that have difficulty getting kids to school at 2 different schools. It just comes with the territory. So if it seems a little confusing, it's very confusing to me too, but it starts to come together as to how difficult. And Robin, really, you've done a lot of work to get to this far. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Robin.
Excuse the piss off.
Okay. I want to really say thank you to Emil and to Steve, who came out and walked. And actually, we got out and walked around. We looked at the way that students would be walking to school if they were there, and it was eye-opening. It was really helpful. I think Robin took us out there. It was really helpful to actually walk it, but I really appreciate you two taking that extra step to see what students would be experiencing going out there.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll be back in December with that. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you very much, Robin. Next up would be item 10.3, portable classroom purchases. And I'm assuming, Robin, you're up again.
That is me. Yes, that is me. Thank you. Part of this process is we have to look at what our needs are next year. And we know, and I don't have to turn around. All the principals are looking at, kids sort of coming through the door every day and looking at school sizes that are clearly uncomfortable for all of us. One of the things we'll look at is, and we're doing the study right now, and thankfully the principals are involved in that openly, which is important to me, is that, what space do we still have at our schools that we could actually move into? Because as I told them yesterday, next year is going to be the hardship year for us. Next year is we don't have enough school, but we may have another 200 kids next year. And we won't know. We may have minus 50 next year. We just don't know what's going to happen because we have no realistic trend and data. And the demographic tells the same thing is, we're doing the best we can, but we have to wait and see. But we're going to have to make a decision, and I'll do that with Dan and Chris and Emil and Steve, really probably within 2 weeks, if not less, to determine where do we need to put the portables so that we're covered and we're covered for next year. And I'm asking tonight authorization for up to 7 portables. We'd make that determination. Right now, they'd be slated at Marsh Creek and Loma Vista, and that would have other implications that we'd have looked at down the road. But right now, what I'll say is these are temporary emergency portable, so to speak, and that what the state looks at them is that we can install them and we have them for 3 years. If we have them for more than 3 years, we have to go back through DSA and we have to upgrade them and do fire alarm safety. So technically we have a 3-year lease maximum, and then we have to get rid of them or we have to upgrade them, which would be incredibly more expensive. But because they're a lease, we can put those orders in here pretty soon and probably have those in place by the time school starts. And that's our intent is to be covered for next year. But we also don't want to, spend $200,000 or $300,000 that we don't need to do because we might have a classroom or two. But with KK growth and with some of the special ed projected growth that we see and just regular enrollment growth, having room for 3 or 4 or up to 7 will give us the flexibility. We'll make that decision really soon. But we're asking for authorization for Dana, our designee, to sign off and getting those orders.
So right now we're just it's direction. So we're looking for direction at this point. It's an information item. And so then we would bring back more of a formal document that you would sign going forward, but we want to have the flexibility to get going on it if you're supportive.
So
You can just talk about it and tell us that that's okay with you, or
that's okay with me.
That's okay with me.
So it's 7 portables. So 3 and 4, Loma Vista and Marsh Creek.
Great question. Thank you. It's up to, I'm looking at, we think we can get 7 total. We may not need 7. As we're looking at our room study, we're looking at capacity studies. We're sort of doing the fine tuning of enrollment projections. It would be up to 7, but it may only be 4, but it could be up to 7.
Robin, I'm just looking at the lease pricing. It's obviously much more cost effective to do the 3 years. Yes. And so we would.
And that would give us the flexibility over time, depending on, because, we may make a surprise. This enrollment may grow. If we continue to grow an average 10 kids a week, that's a different issue that we would really have some issues.
Certainly.
Is there an option for us to increase it more than 7?
We could.
We'd have to go back.
We could, yeah. What I'd have to do with John Navarro is we'd have to go out, because what we're doing is we're looking at the sites where power and electric and fire is already in the ground, where we don't have to plumb all that. Otherwise, that's probably another $100,000 per classroom to run all that plumbing and utilities. The utilities are already stubbed at Loma Vista, and they're already stubbed and prepped at Marsh Creek as part of the build out of the Marsh Creek school. There is a little bit of electrical we need to do that's built into the quote. That's why the quotes between Loma Vista and Marsh Creek are a little different. There's some wire that needs to be pulled, but all the utilities, all the piping, all the underground is already there.
And what did you? Maybe you said this the time frame.
If we ordered here pretty soon, we'd have them by the start of the school year.
Completely done.
Yeah, they're basically they portably bring them on a trailer and they put them on blocks and they're ready to go in like a week once they're delivered.
They're nice blocks.
They're nice blocks.
They dress them up a little bit, but yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, so that we have 2 new ones a new one that we have installed on the side of the building over here for the special ed offices, and that's essentially what it would look like.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
But the reason we have to be so far out ahead is just because there's a long lag time now to get them in. So that's why we're bringing it to you now, and we need to just have your direction to act. So
sure.
Did we get all agreement?
I agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10.4, approval of resolution number 2022-20.
We got our application in for the CalShape program. We got it into phase 3 because in the first 2 phases we didn't qualify. We didn't have enough free and reduced lunch kids or underrepresented kids. They opened up to everyone, and there was still funding available. So we worked the company that did the assessment for us and helped us put the application together. And so it's been accepted. So this is the process to now submit the paperwork. I'm not sure what the timeline is to release those funds, but it's about $1.4 million that allows us to do a full assessment of our HVAC systems and put together a package requesting money to replace those where we need them. So this is tonight is the resolution is to approve all the documents that we then submit back to CalShape to continue the process to get the funding to do the evaluation. It's a 2-step process.
That would be all of our schools they would look at?
Yes, it's all schools, including the district office, so all 12 sites.
And so this grant only funds the investigation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I move that we approve resolution 2022-20.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.4, resolution 2022-20. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 4-0.
Before we go on, Nicole, how you doing? You want to go home?
Oh, I'm okay.
You sure? All right, because feel free.
Hear the groans.
Peck. Nicole's been sick. It's not like I'm throwing her out of here. I just.
A long day.
I knew she'd say no. Okay, moving on to item 10.5, approval of lease agreement with the city of Brentwood.
Thank you. So we were hoping to have a lease in front of you tonight. That we're still working through that process. We need to have a lease in place before we take occupancy. So we're working with city staff. I've seen a draft. There's some work we need to do that, and I intend to share that with Steve and Emo when that's in a phase. We hope to get that done probably the first week of December now, and this is so we don't have to wait till the next board meeting. Technically, we'll bring it back for ratification for sure, but this would authorize Dana or his designee to sign off on the lease so we can enter into a lease and actually get occupancy. It's one of the requirements of the state for us to get reimbursement from the state or to apply to state funding. We actually have to either purchase the property or have a lease in place for us to request reimbursement for the building of the school, for part of that building.
Okay, Robin, I know that we're all familiar with this, but for the possible dozen or so watching the live stream, can you just kind of give a rundown on which property we're discussing here?
So the property in question is we have an MOU and an easement agreement with the city of Brentwood to build the theater on city parkland. And that went through city council, came back through us with the intent that we would find appropriate land to exchange, an equitable exchange. And thankfully, on behalf of the city staff, working with city's park director, Bruce Mulder, we have a really good working relationship and are very interested in resolving this to the best interest of both parties, and because it benefits our students and our kids and our community. Together, they're all ours. When you come down to the actual land and who owns it, there's a bunch of rules you have to follow. So we have land that we would love to exchange. Right now, we can't. We're not allowed to access that land to exchange it with the city. It would be an area sort of over there in the Lone Tree area. And once that land is ours and we clear the hardship, we'll be able to work through that process. So because of that, and really talking with the city and Steve and Emo, the option to buy it, while it's an option, it's not the best option for anybody. So the other option with the state is to enter a 40-year lease relative to state construction and school and reimbursement options. And that's what we're working through right now. And really the idea in the lease is we would have a lease with the city to use the property. And in turn, instead of us technically paying the city money, they would get a joint use and have access to the theater and part of the Bristow area at really no cost. So it's sort of a win-win for both. They'd have access to the theater and part of the Bristow property, which they currently have. We'd upgrade that a little bit, and probably looking at one of the other fields in the city because there's short soccer fields across the city. And so we're interested in working that situation out that's mutually beneficial to both of us. And so we're working through the final details to make sure the lease is written right. And that includes lots of legal people involved and getting there and making sure that it represents both the district and city appropriately. And that's what takes a little bit of time, is there's two parties and two sets of lawyers that need to be happy, and then we have to make CDE happy, so there's really a third party. So it's convoluted in a way, but in working with Bruce, I got to give Bruce all the credit in the world. Together we've communicated through this, and we have the intent that we need to make this work so it's beneficial to both parties.
Very good. And this would be a 40-year lease with some sort of escape clause that once
right, and that's what we're working through.
Identified. Very good.
Yeah, we're working. The problem is OPSC, the Office for Public School Construction, has very specific rules on and that's what we're fine tuning. That is, there's some language the city suggests that we may not be able to put in there. So we got to work through that.
We wouldn't have to reserve our Lone Tree site the whole time out there.
That right now the Lone Tree site, we got the Lone Tree site with state hardship money in 2009, and until we finish the school site and we work through the whole process relative to what we committed to the state, we can't consider any of that land for exchange until we get to that point.
Great.
Does the city still have, in that area we're talking about over by the theater, do they still have any 100%? This is theirs, like the soccer field?
Yeah, we worked with the city, so we took about an acre of their land in between their parking lot and their park. And so, I mean, if you've been out there, the parking lot's essentially done, and now there's a walkway. It's sodded, and it's the sod just got planted, so it's all fenced off. But there's still almost a full size soccer field that runs the other direction. Okay. And then we'll have a new fence that goes up. And working with the city, they're pretty excited about that part of it and some other options that we have around that. So yeah, there's still a pretty good portion of the park. So if you know, before the soccer field used to run east and west because there used to be that huge slope. So part of the construction brought that slope up. So now the soccer field can go the other way pretty level.
Perfect. And at this time, this is just an informational item because we are still working on the lease, or do we need to?
It is an action item, but what you'd be taking action on is allowing me to sign the lease and get us going, and then you would still bring it back. I would still bring it back and ratify.
Okay.
To you.
Great.
I'll make a motion that we approve the tentative lease agreement with the city of Brentwood and give Dr. Eaton permission to do the things that he has to do and bring us back a updated agreement.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.5 for the tentative lease agreement with the city of Brentwood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Next up, this is an information item, 10.6, an update on our professional development day.
We're going to take a break from the Robin Schmidt show, and we're going to bring in Liz Zabar and Kirsten Job and Jeff Weiss to update on our November 1st PD day.
All right, welcome.
I would like someone to help project. Okay, I think we're ready now. Well, good evening, board members. It's good to see you all. We have Kirsten Job and Jeff Weiss to accompany me. We are going to share some highlights from our November 1st Professional Development Day. And I think I'm going to get help from Robin on, oh, even better. All right. So we have, thank you. So we want to share that it's been several years since we've been able to have our whole district come together for a professional development day. And so this took a lot of work and planning, but it was so well worth it. The structure for our PD day was that we had morning sessions where our school sites were able to do site work and either work on goals or work on professional learning communities, which was the focus of our middle schools. In the afternoon session, this is a very preferred mode where teachers get to choose things that they're interested in learning and growing in, and so they get to choose from a menu of items. So these are a couple of pictures of what some of our school sites did in the morning, whether it was about working on belonging or specific backward planning, so that they're walking away with some instructional plans to go back to the classroom in. And the structure for our afternoons, we had almost or over 70 topics for teachers to choose from. And so we had 2 sessions, and our C&I department used a relatively new system called Vector, which helps people go online and just sign up for their classes. It made that process very easy. And so we had Garin and Edney Hill Middle School host the afternoon sessions. So everyone converged on those 2 sites. So how were we able to get so many quality presenters, including our own teachers? We had reviewed input from staff prior and talked to people about what their interests and needs were, and then we were able to go and recruit presenters. We also contacted folks from outside organizations, and then we did an announcement, like an all call, and we were able to get, and this is just a quick list of all of the different topics and staff members that stepped up. to make over 70 options for people to choose from. And we'll talk a little bit more about those topics. So here are a few snapshots of great presentations that teachers participated in at Garin. And then we have some additional snapshots from sessions at Eden Hill. And so, there were general themes for the topics ranging from mathematics, language arts, social studies, diversifying the historical narrative, and technology and program skills. And that was really rooted more from our curriculum and instruction department. I'm going to hand it over to Kirsten to talk a little bit about student services.
So more specifically in student services and the SEL lens, we had a lot of our people stepped up. Our counselors specifically really wanted to make sure that we had those offerings. And then a variety of teachers wanted to make sure that those areas were covered. So we had creating a sense of belonging in the classroom, helping students cope with grief, supporting the LGBTQ plus students, the positive behavior intervention systems, the social emotional learning areas, trauma-informed practices, brain breaks, avoiding burnout, and mindfulness for adults. Those were all well attended.
In special education, we listened to what our providers had requested. And so we had a double training on augmentative and assistive communication. We also offered training in the morning for our speech and language pathologists to get continuing education units that they require in order to maintain their licensing. So we did that. That's not necessarily on this slide right there. We also noticed that because we have so many brand new teachers, we wanted to go back to the fundamentals of writing IEPs and making sure that they had training in how to do that. So we offered that. We offered training on how to maintain files and all of those kind of paperwork, housekeeping kind of stuff. In addition to pedagogy, we talked about the unique learning system, which is a curricula that we're using for people that have low cognitive ability and low verbal ability. And so we offered a wide range of training geared towards all different types of professionals in special ed.
So it's really important that we get feedback after a professional development day. So we did ask for participants to take a survey, and we are really happy with these numbers. We have over 90, I think it's almost like 97% either reported that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the day, and just a few people that weren't.
Having election night flashbacks with your graph at this point.
Sorry about the color choice. All right. And then this is just a sample of the variety of topics that the respondents attended, because we wanted to gauge just interest level, because that can be something that we want to continue if we see that there was a topic that was really well attended. And so we just have a couple of slides to show all of the different topics.
So each one was about an hour and a half?
Yeah, about 85 minutes, right. And it seemed like it flew by. Like I was a presenter, and before I knew it, we were done. But it was just really good conversation, and people were coming out, I've got great ideas. I'm going to take this back to the classroom. So we really liked the excitement that it generated. And so we do want to thank all of the amazing teachers that stepped up to, take the time to do really well-planned presentations, as well as the staff that then recruited those from outside of our organization. And bravo to Garin at Eden Hill Middle School. The campuses looked great. The classrooms were ready to go. All of our technology was set up. So everything went so smoothly, even though it rained. And then, of course, our district staff who managed all the logistics and the communication so that teachers knew where to go. So overall, it was a really positive experience. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, you guys.
Dr. Eaton, I believe I looked, and is there any chance we can let the principals go since there's no other?
It's totally up to you as the board if you want to let them go.
You and Mr.
I would say 100%. Let's.
Can we have Sammy stay?
And excuse our.
Make up time, and this is the last time.
Time I look out there, it's getting more and more painful.
Now, please, you guys, enjoy your evening.
Leave. Did you want to stick around for this? Not really. Okay.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
welcome to
actually,
stay if you want. It'll be
you,
quick.
you don't have to leave.
No, you don't have to leave. But tune in to AM 1040. We'll give you the results.
Do you want me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Item 10.7.
So one of the reasons the principals are so tired is that one of the things that we've been looking at, and honestly, we've been hearing from all of our staff is really the need to provide more site support on a daily basis to our elementary schools, especially. And I want to just put up here sort of our current staffing. I know you've seen this before, but you can see there's a combination of TSAs, some of them full-time, some of them part-time at our elementary schools. We have one school now with a vice principal. That's at Pioneer because of their size, and then our middle schools are different at 2 per site. Just a little bit of the history is we used to have vice principals at all of our elementary schools. So if you had over 700 students, you had a full-time vice principal. If you had 600 students, you had a part-time vice principal. What happened when the market crashed in the 2000s and we had to do massive budget cuts, those positions were cut, and we moved that benchmark to 800 students for a full-time position. And then when we had the Great Recession, we eliminated any of the part-time VPs that we had going forward. And so the VPs were only in place. Really, they've been at Cray and Pioneer for the most part, and then Cray's dipped in size a little bit over the last little bit. The work hasn't gone away. In fact, it's increased, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go forward. So what sites have done is they've used some money that they get from us for the site to sort of backfill with teachers on special assignments doing different pieces. And those TOSAs have done a really tremendous job so far. I think in looking at what's changed, there's been several things, but I just want to highlight a few. Is our IEP meetings and the number of students and the length of those meetings that require an administrator to be present are basically taking many of our site administrators off campus for multiple parts of the week, often daily when they're not there. And so that prohibits them from being the leader of the school oftentimes. I think the number of students who require individual support, behavioral interventions, that has significantly increased. And while we've seen it dramatically increase post-pandemic, we were seeing it before as well. We were seeing those challenges start to escalate, and that requires somebody on campus to be a support of that student. And so sometimes it's the counselor, but oftentimes it's the administrator on site. The new ELOP program that's after school at every site, we have a standalone program now with multiple students that are there after school. And while that's it's supposed to be a self-contained program, those are our students, and we have a need to have really a liaison between our school and those programs going on. And oftentimes we need to have somebody there that's for part of the day to be available to that to those programs to be able to support them. And I would say also, you just saw in the professional development day, I think our sites really are requiring extensive professional development support. There's changing programs. There's more of a need of academic intervention. There's updated expectations that are coming from the state. And right now with our Wednesday program, all of those expectations are falling on the principal, and oftentimes they're delegating that to a TOSA. And honestly, it's too much to expect for our principals. And so what we're really doing is coming to you for a recommendation that our school site need more on the ground support. I want to talk about our TOSA program because I want to make it clear that our teachers on special assignment, they have done a high quality job. They are high quality people, and they've supported their sites in multiple ways. And I do expect if we approve to have VPs that many of them may choose to apply for the VP role. It will be a different role than what they're doing now, but we're hopeful that some of them will as we go forward. I think one of the things for vice principals is they're required to have an administrative credential. That allows them to evaluate staff. It allows them to conduct investigations. It allows them to be the administrative designee in IEP meetings, amongst other things. I think the other thing is vice principals and administrators aren't really necessarily employees that work to a specific schedule. They're there as the day needs them. And so the needs of the site can really impact where their schedule sits and when they're on campus. And that's especially important when you think of the ELOP program and extra days that are there. I also would say that elementary vice principal positions are extremely competitive positions. We usually, when we've had those in the past, we've had a high turnout for applicants. And I would expect that we would get several strong candidates if we went out after, in the case that the TSA was not somebody that, the TOSA was not somebody that could fill in for that. So right now, just from the finances of it, so right now the sites contribute about $482,000 out of their own money, and then that money that comes from the district that's allocated to them. Replacement cost is a piece. So oftentimes you might have a TOSA that's been teaching for several years, but instead of charging them what that teacher makes, we're charging them the lower level of what we would pay for the replacement teacher that takes their place. So there's some savings in there, and that's about $167,000 in addition. All of the elementary schools that aren't Pioneer at this point, that don't have a VP, we give them an additional $10,000 to provide support. So there's another $70,000. So it's about $660,000 that we're spending right now. We estimate the cost for VPs at the other 7 schools to be about a little over $1.1 million. So we go forward. What we're proposing in order to fund it is to take that $660,000 that's currently being spent at the site level. So we would use that money. We would take $250,000 of ELOP funds, justifying that a portion of every day that those vice principals are functioning, they would be supporting that ELOP program. That's also a program that has intervention programs that are on site, and so they'd be supervising that and liaisoning with them. We also have some categorical instructional funding that we think that we can use as well. We might be using it a different way than we have in the past. So things that might have been central before, for supporting the instructional program at the school, we would switch that out to the school site, and those VPs would be playing a role in the staff development on Wednesdays and so forth. And that would bring us to that total and allow us to make that switch going forward.
So the TOSAs would be eliminated.
I'm sorry?
The TOSAs would be eliminated.
So the TOSAs, instead of TOSAs, there would be vice principals at every place. So the position would change over. It's like I said, it's possible that many of our TOSAs would apply for those positions and they'd be very competitive for them. But the position, we would no longer have a TOSA. We would have a full vice principal in each of the schools.
And like Steve said earlier, can you explain to the 16 people watching what a TOSA?
So a teacher on special assignment. So basically it's a teaching position that instead of being in a classroom, they're on a special assignment. In this case, they're often in charge of intervention and English learner programs at the school site, which is a role that a traditional vice principal would play as well going forward. But there are limitations. For example, a TOSA works 184 days, where a vice principal works 205 days. So there are other pieces in there that play a part in going forward.
Can you give us any idea of how many of our current TOSAs have the credentials that would be required to be VPs?
Yeah, one of the plans is we do have, I'm not going to give you an exact number, but we do have several that have administrative credentials because that have been a desire to them, but we do have some that don't going forward. I think one of the things that's really important to us and why we're trying to get out in front of this now is that if we're going to do this, one of our commitments is to get out, and each of the TOSAs that's at a site has been talked to by their principals, so they know that this is coming up today. And one of the things that we're going to do is Chris is going to be meeting with them to talk about how the job would be different, explain what the application process would look like, and then post those jobs in February, right? And so with the goal of being out in front, to draw the best candidates from all over, but also give our teachers on special assignment the options of, to choose whether they want to do that or to be able to participate in going to a different position or back to the classroom if they wanted to do that going forward.
Could you explain what the TOSAs that don't get picked for the VP role, what would happen to them?
Yeah, they'd still remain teachers. They'd still be paid the same amount, but they'd be put in a placement, right? Back to their classroom. Back at a classroom, yeah, or in a different role if there was another role somewhere else. Yeah.
May apply with a partial credential in the administrative credential, or must it be
No, that's a good question. In the past, we've looked at somebody. It really depends on the pool, right? What the law wants us to do, and just like it is with teachers, if there's an option if all things were equal and we had a fully credentialed person, the law would rather that we went for the fully credentialed person. If we had somebody in-house that was working on their credential and was close, that would be something that we could consider going forward. So that's a possibility.
Great.
The only challenge would be if they didn't have their full credential, then some of the things that I described earlier around evaluations and investigations and an IEPs, we'd have to wait till they were fully credentialed, which could be a disadvantage. Yeah. And then the goal would be to post those jobs in February going forward.
Questions?
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposal to add vice principals to the elementary school for the 23-24 school year as described to us.
second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.7, the elementary vice principals for 2023-24. All in
Aye.
favor? Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Next up. And thank you all for staying. Now have a good evening.
Wait, I got one more.
Sounds.
Yeah, wait, Sammy. No, you're okay too. Thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
I was over you first.
Good night, Sammy. Thank you.
All right, item 10.8, the learning recovery block grant.
All right. So secondary to that, just as a reminder, it just seems like a little while ago in March of 2021, you received a one-time grant called the ELO, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, not to be confused with the ELOP grant. So anyway, let's not get into all that, for about $5.5 million. And so what you chose to do with that money, based on our recommendation, was to provide both an intervention program for academics and a counseling program, increasing our counseling program. So we decided to split that up over 2 years so we could use it. And really the goal behind that program was to deal with some of the harm that was caused as a result of students being out of school during the pandemic. And so the intervention site program has a certificated teacher and aides at each of our physical programs, each of our physical sites. And that was about $3.5 million over 2 years. It's a very expensive program, but it's been very positive for the kids that'll be in it. And as we go on further in the year, one of the things the board asked is to see some data. So we'll be bringing that back at probably following the new year, so you can see some of that. And then the counseling increase. So before we had elementary counseling, we had a half-time counselor at every site. That was increased to a full-time counselor, and middle schools went from 1.5 to 2 full-time counseling. And if you see those counselors, they're busy every single minute of the day. So when we enacted that, we knew one of the biggest challenges was it created a cliff, right? Is that these programs aren't nice to have. They're not bonus programs. They're things that really we need ongoing. But we had money to do it for the 2 years. And so we did that. So, in the 22-23 budget, there was a learning recovery block grant that was passed that was also $5.5 million. And it's usable through the 27-28 school year. So even though we received the money and it's promised to us, we have a longer point to spend it. What we're proposing to you is when you hear from sites, the intervention needs are not, they're not going to go away just because the money's gone away that we had over the first 2 years, and the counseling program is not going to go away. I'm not always crazy about recommending that we spend one-time money on ongoing things, because it creates the challenge that we're having this year, which is we have a program that we need ongoing, but we're recommending to carry it out for the number of years until the money comes out, in the hope that other money will follow and we'll be able to do it. But what we're recommending is continuing on the intervention program at a smaller scale, and I'll talk about that for 3 years, and then to continue on the counseling program exactly as it is for 4 more years going forward. So let me talk a little bit about the intervention program. So what this would provide is a full-time certificated staff member at each elementary site for the next 3 years, and really to focus on foundational reading. There's a big push in the state where they want schools to really focus on every student reading by 3rd grade. And while we've been doing that, we also believe that there might be more money coming from the state that might be specifically targeted for this. And so we could marry that and this program together if that was necessary. And I'll tell you why that matters. Instead of having a full-time person at every middle school, we'd also be providing some additional funding for them to have targeted periods of intervention. So it's a little bit different at the middle school because they're in a period environment, right, where they can have periods of intervention going forward. So giving them some money to do that. I want to be clear, though, that this money does not provide for the classified support positions that have been there now. So if you go through the intervention programs, as you've toured schools, you've seen oftentimes there's 2 and 3 aides that are in there. It's just honestly, it's too expensive to continue on, and it would create a cliff right away from my perspective. But the school sites also do get money for those kinds of things, and what we'd like to suggest to them is they take some of that money and put classified people in positions to be able to do that. I think the other piece, right, is we're still short about 25 people for filling the classified positions right now in the district, right? And so we're not sure that we're going to continue to have the employees to support that going forward as well. But the other piece that I talked about with the state is it is our hope that they'll put out a very targeted grant that we might be able to apply for that would give the sites even more money to hire classified support to go with this as well, with that targeted approach by 3rd grade reading. The counseling increase, this is really straightforward. It's continuing with the additional half-time counselor at every elementary school, making that position full-time, and the additional half-time counselor at every middle school, making it 2 full-time positions. And it's for 4 years that would carry it on. Again, what I would say is if we're still sitting here in 3 and 4 years, we're going to have the problem that these programs will still be needed, right, as we go forward. But we think right now it's what the money is intended to be for. We think it's the best way to give us the longest stretch to support our students and what they need. And so anyway, I just put the challenges in there that you saw. It's a one-time approach. There's a fiscal cliff at the end of the year. I think the other thing is, it is possible that in a recession, this happened once before, that the state they call it a clawback. They would claw back some money for us. One of the things that we think in developing a plan like this, where we'd have it encumbered over multiple years, is oftentimes they claw back money that's not encumbered. It's not targeted for something. It's sitting in an account. But if we have it encumbered, then they wouldn't be able to do that. Now, the state writes the law, so they can change it at any point. But it also offers us some extra protection that way as we go forward. And so, again, the proposal is here in front of you. You know, things could change throughout the year, right? We could get different sets of money and we might come back and, you know, advocate for adding to this, right, as we go forward. But this is our recommendation as we go. And again, like the program before, is it's important for us to get ahead of that because we need to work with the people that are in the current positions and make sure that they have every opportunity to change their mind if they want to apply for something different, or also with our classified professionals that have done such a great job. And so.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Eaton. Any questions for?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Learning Recovery Block Grant as presented to us.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.8, the Learning Recovery Block Grant. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
And finally, item 10.9, the approval of an updated job description.
Yeah, and you're going to see me doing this throughout the year as we update job descriptions that are more fitting to the job that's being carried out. And in this particular case, this is a job that's currently held by Jennifer Whitney, who's retiring at the end of this month. And so before we repost that position, we're changing the title of it to Coordinator of Educational Programs because that's more appropriate to what Jennifer is doing. Currently, she is titled as an Intervention Coordinator, and her role is actually broader than that. So to be more appropriate to what the position is, bringing this forward to you for approval, and then that we'll turn that into a job description. I gave you the posting here so you get an idea of what that is, and then we'll turn that into a job description and move forward.
Great.
I just add that when we've done comparisons for salary with other job descriptions in other school districts, we found out you couldn't, by the title, compare the jobs because the job description often on one side or the other incorporated more than one job description. So I think this is an ongoing thing that you need to do also as the district grows and look at these job descriptions. So I move that we approve the job description.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.9, updated job description. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. That was our final item. Do any board members have any comment or future item, agenda item requests?
I would like to request if we have the information that as an informational item to explain what the music and art proposition may mean for us money wise. If again, I know you can't tell how much we're going to get, but maybe by
We'll bring it back to the board meeting on in December.
Perfect.
Very good. All right. If there are no further items, our next regular board meeting will be held on December 14th, 2022 at 6 p.m. and we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Eric and Robert. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, Kristen and Jeff.